Mr. Thompson here. We're looking at U.S. History Standard 12, evaluate how westward expansion impacted Plains Indians and fulfilled manifest destiny. In particular, we're looking at Part B of that standard, evaluate how the growth of the western population and innovations in farming and ranching impacted Plains Indians. The railroad companies contributed to the development of the West by selling low cost sections of their western land for farming. Settlers, drawn by the Homestead Act of 1862, traveled west on trains to farm the fertile soil. Western farmers used the trains to ship their grains east, and ranchers shipped their cattle to eastern butchers. Both farmers and ranchers sold their goods to people who could not be easily reached without the railroads. The railroads earned money by transporting settlers west and goods east. As settlers began to populate the West in growing numbers, they brought with them new farming and ranching techniques. Ranching in the West had been based on the open range system before the 1880s. Cattle were branded with the symbol of their owner's ranch. Property was not enclosed with costly fencing, which meant the cattle roamed freely. Thus, the importance of branding your cattle. Cowboys were hired by ranch owners each spring to go on extensive roundups to collect the cattle belonging to that owner. The roundup could cover hundreds of miles given the open range. The cowboys would then drive the cattle to the closest railroad line, which could sometimes be hundreds of miles away and take weeks or months to complete. The work of the cowboys was difficult and often lonely. During the late 1880s, the open range system declined with the invention of barbed wire fencing. The new fencing material made it incredibly cheap and easy to enclose even the largest of ranches. The work of cowboys changed as cattle roundups and drives took on new characteristics centered within the newly enclosed ranches. Plains Indians were impacted by the change in ranching. Many of the nomadic tribes became restricted in their ability to roam freely when land was roped off by barbed wire. Conflict over land claims also escalated when ranchers began claiming larger tracts of lands that were also inhabited by American Indians. Farming in the West was also transformed after the Civil War as more settlers moved to the region. Life was hard for the homesteaders who worked to make a life for their family. New plows were introduced that could tackle the tough sod of the West. With the increased plowing and more scientific methods for farming, the West was a more desirable location for settlers to make a new start. The increased plowing and farming, coupled with drought, led to environmental challenges that became significant issues in the early 1900s. American Indians were impacted by the increased population and farming because once again their land was being claimed by white settlers. The ability of Plains Indians to migrate with the buffalo herd was restricted as more farmers sectioned off their land with barbed wire and changed the landscape with their farming methods.